Jinshi searched his mind for a way to change the subject. He said, ahem, I discovered something interesting. The girl's adoptive father is a eunuch. He was a doctor here once. The girl you mean Maomao? The other man asked. If she was taught by a palace doctor, that would explain a great deal about her medical knowledge. A eunuch though, you heard me. The simple fact was that no doctor of the Ria Palace was likely to be a man of renown. Someone who had the means to become a qualified medical practitioner had no need to become a eunuch in order to find work. The only physicians who came to the Ria Palace had their own problems. Gershon asked, could such a talented practitioner really have been among the eunuchs? Jinshi said, that is the question, isn't it? Gershon hummed and stroked his chin. Jinshi felt he had said enough. His aide was a sharp man and could take the investigation from here. They heard the clear ringing of a bell. This little device was set up so Jinshi would be immediately aware of any visitors to his office. Gershon put down his work and stood by the entrance, waiting for the new arrival. Another day, another visit from the weirdo with the monocle. He did not have any particular business. He simply lounged around on a couch sipping juice. He said, thanks for taking care of that little thing the other day. Hugh, it did turn out to be quite a story, didn't it? Lacan stroked his chin and squinted at Jinshi, making his already narrow eyes even narrower. It seems the youngest of those brothers was the most capable after all, Jinshi said as he flipped through some papers. He suspected the commander had known all along. After the incident with their father's inheritance, the three men had seemed to reconcile. However, it was only an appearance. The youngest brother had suddenly revealed an ability that was previously unknown. There was even talk that he could soon be working for the palace. Jinshi had seen some of his products, and the delicacy of the workmanship impressed him. He did not know exactly what had happened, but he strongly suspected the apothecary's daughter did, and she was not saying anything about it. I think if we got that young man to handle the furnishings for the ritual, it would redound to the glory of our ruler. Yes, of course. Jinshi hated the way Lacan could make virtually anything sound important. A man of Jinshi's stature would normally hardly even hear of ritual preparations. Then there is the last work the father left behind. Just simple metal fittings, but they are so fine they could be fit for ritual use themselves. I find I keep wondering, Master Strategist, why you feel you must speak with me about these craftsmen. Why not? It is a waste to leave buried talent buried. Lacan could be obnoxious, but when he was right, he was right. Even if there was an ulterior motive for whatever he happened to be saying. If nothing else, Lacan was an excellent judge of talent. It was no exaggeration to say his ability had helped him reach his current position. He might seem to be slacking off now, but his work was being done diligently by the people he had discovered and employed. Jinshi could almost feel jealous of him. What does it matter whether he is the elder brother or the younger brother? The cream should rise to the top. He made it sound so simple. That preference for simplicity made him useful in his way, but he required careful handling. Jinshi straightened his papers and passed them to an official who took them away. Incidentally, he wanted to ask him about something. The thing we talked about before, Jinshi said. He meant the courtesan he had heard about previously. Did Lacan intend to play dumb again? The commander put his hands on his cheeks and grinned. If you want to know about that world, it is better to ask someone who comes from it. Then he got to his feet. The official attending him sighed, relieved to finally be going home. He said, I see it's that time. My assistants won't let me hear the end of it if I keep them too long. He finished the last of his juice, then set the other bottle he had brought with him on Jinshi's desk. Let your little serving girls have it or something. It is easy on the throat, not too sweet. The middle-aged soldier waved a hand in Jinshi's general direction. See you tomorrow. Then he was gone. Chapter 9. Lacan. The night before, Maomao had had a strange dream. She had dreamed of something from long ago. Or rather, she dreamed of something that must have happened a long time ago, because she couldn't possibly remember it herself. She wasn't certain if what she dreamed of had actually occurred. She thought it must have been from visiting that woman. It brought back old memories. In the dream, a grown woman looked down on Maomao from above. Her disheveled hair tumbled around a drawn face. Her eyes glinted hungrily as she stared. Her makeup was flaking off. The rouge on her lips was starting to smear. The woman reached out and grasped Maomao's hand in hers. Her skin had tiny welts all over it like a leaf in autumn. In her other hand the woman held a knife. The hand that held Maomao's was wrapped in bleached cotton cloths, layer after layer. All of them were seeping red. The fluttering cotton smelled rusty. A sound like the mewl of a kitten escaped Maomao's vocal cords. She realized she was crying. Maomao's hand was pressed against the bed. The woman raised the knife high. Her lips were contorted and trembling. Her red, swollen eyes were still running with tears. Foolish woman. The woman brought the knife down. Goodness, are you tired? I'm afraid bedtime won't be for a little while yet, Sugen said as Maomao yawned. She sounded polite, but the old lady could be a real disciplinarian. So Maomao straightened up and focused on polishing the silver eating vessel. She would be practically begging for trouble if she appeared to be slacking on the very day after she had taken time off. The fact that it was evening was no excuse. I am quite fine, ma'am, Maomao said. It was just a dream, strange or not. She had assumed that if she threw herself into the routine of her work she would soon forget it. However, it had refused to quite go away all day. This wasn't like me, Maomao thought. A rueful smile flitted across her face. Just as she was stacking the dishes back on the shelf, she heard rapid footsteps. The honey candles were burning in the room. It was time for their master to return. Suyen took a dish that Maomao had polished to perfection and began preparing a snack. Jinshi walked clear through the living area and appeared in the kitchen. He said, a gift from a weirdo. Share it with Suyen. He set some sort of bottle down on the table. The weirdo was a particularly unpleasant official. He had been making himself something of a nuisance to Jinshi lately. Maomao undid the stopper and was greeted by a sour, citrusy smell. She figured it was some kind of juice. Are we accepting gifts from weirdos now? She asked. Her voice was completely flat. Jinshi had already retreated to the living area and was resting on the couch. Maomao added some coals to the brazier. Geishun observed that they were scraping the bottom of their coal supply and then left the room. Maomao figured he was going to get more. Now there was a man you could rely on. Jinshi gave a great scratch of his head which was most uncouth and looked at Maomao. He asked, are you familiar with the regulars at the Verdigris house? Maomao cocked her head, surprised by the question. If they are noticeable enough about it, yes. What kind of people go there? That is confidential. Jinshi knitted his brow at the brusque response. Then he seemed to realize he was approaching it incorrectly and tried something else. Let me ask you this then. How would one go about reducing the price of a courtesan? He sounded uncommonly careful as he picked his words. What a distressing topic, Maomao huffed, but there are many ways to do so, especially when it comes to the top-ranked women. The most renowned courtesans, the most sought after, were not working constantly. They did not often work, perhaps only a few times each month. Accepting customers every day was for the night walkers, the women who needed work to survive. A highly ranked courtesan preferred not to be seen very often. Remaining secluded caused potential customers to overestimate her worth. These women gained patrons through their singing and dancing, their musical skills, or other aspects of their education. At the Verdigris house, apprentices received basic training, then were separated into groups based on their appearance and prospects, and those who had fewer advantages. They began taking customers immediately after their debut. They weren't selling their art but their bodies. Those who showed potential began by sharing tea with the customers. Those adept at entrancing patrons with conversation or ravishing them with intelligence rose in value. By carefully limiting how many people a popular courtesan saw, she could become a woman who commanded a year's wages in silver just to share a drink. This system allowed some women to have entire careers until their contracts were bought out, without a customer ever touching them. This fact alone appealed to men's fantasies. Everyone wanted to be the first to choose such a blossom. A flower is valuable because it remains untouched, Maomao said, lighting some soothing incense. She was doing it for Jinshi, who had looked tired recently, but this evening it seemed it might also help her. When someone picks it, its value immediately drops by at least half. But there is more. She gave a small sigh, then took a deep sniff of the incense. If such a woman were to become with child, her value would be practically nothing. It was all in that emotionless tone. It was all because of that stupid dream. Jinchi let out a deep breath as he pressed his chop to some paperwork. He wondered what was going on. What the apothecary's daughter had said the night before nagged at him. She had sounded so solemn. Then, conveniently, the man most likely to know the answer to Jinchi's private question appeared. "Hello, hello." The grinning fox knocked on the door and entered without waiting for an invitation. He had come just as he promised he would yesterday. He had even made a subordinate bring a couch with a nice, soft cushion. Jinchi tried to resist making a face as he wondered how long the man would be here today. "Shall we pick up where we left off yesterday?" Lakan asked, pouring some juice from a bottle he brought with him. He had even brought treats of some kind. He placed a baked snack on the paper-riddled desk, and it smelled richly of butter. The occupants of the office wished he would stop putting food directly on the table. Gaeshun could only hold his head in his hands when he saw the oil stains left on the papers. "It seems, sir, that you did something quite reprehensible," Jinchi said, as he pressed his chop to another piece of paper. He barely noticed what was said, but Gaeshun, who was standing behind him, did not speak, so it was likely all right. Based on what Maomao had told him, he had a pretty good idea what this clever madman had done. Then another thought came to him, and it was equally unwelcome. His actions weren't incomprehensible. They had a consistency, even a certain logic. Jinchi thought he understood why Lakan had started with the talk of buying out a contract at the Verdigris house. He understood why Lakan had spoken of his old friend, but Jinchi didn't want to admit the implications. To do so would only invite yet more trouble. Reprehensible. How rude, and the last thing I want to hear from a thieving little magpie. Lakan's eye narrowed behind his monocle, and then he laughed. "I had finally brought the old lady around, you know. It took me 10 years of work. And then you swoop in and snatch her away from me. Just imagine how that feels." Lakan gestured emphatically with his cup. Ice floated in the juice. "Are you saying I should give back your shiny trinket?" By this, Jinchi meant the reticent young woman. "No, keep it. I do not want to get stuck in the same rut as before, and if I do not want it, then what could I possibly do? I could count on one hand the number of people who could go against your will, my lord." Lakan was resolute about never saying quite what he really meant. It drove Jinchi to distraction. Lakan knew who Jinchi was and what she was, otherwise he never would have said what he did, but the logic was there in his words. Lakan took off his monocle. He wiped it with a handkerchief, then replaced it in front of the other eye. So it was simply an affectation. Jinchi had always known Lakan was a strange one, but he did wonder what his little girl would think. The way he emphasized the words little girl was annoying, so it must be true. Much as Jinchi resisted admitting it, Lakan was Maomao's birth father. Jinchi finally stopped stamping paperwork. "Could you let her know I'll be popping by for a visit one of these days?" Lakan said. He left the office, licking the butter from his fingers. He left the couch where it was, though, which implied he would return. Almost at the same time, Jinchi and Gaeshun hung their heads and let out great sighs. Jinchi told Maomao as soon as he got back to his room, "I met an official who said he would like to see you." He realized staying silent would do no good, so he decided to say what he needed to. "And who is this official?" she asked. Jinchi thought he noticed a small flicker of unease behind her carefully indifferent expression. She was hiding it well, though, and her voice remained as toneless as ever. "Ahem. His name is Lakan." No sooner were the words out of his mouth than Maomao's expression shifted. Her eyes widened and she took a step away from Jinchi, almost involuntarily. Until now she had looked at him like a beetle, like a dried-out earthworm, like mud, like dust, and even like a flattened frog. She had looked at him in many demeaning and belittling ways, but he realized that all of these were kind and gentle compared to the look she leveled at him now. It was frankly hard to describe, but even Jinchi felt he could barely survive it. Maomao looked as if she might smash open his heart and pour in molten metal, so that not even ashes remained. This one look communicated to Jinchi clearly how Lakan's daughter felt about her father. "I'll turn him down." Somehow Jinchi managed, still a little dazed. It was a wonder his heart didn't stop. Thank you, sir. Maomao for her part regained her customary expressionless affect and then resumed her work. Chapter 10 Suhari, so he knows. She had a feeling about the person Jinchi had been talking about the other day. He was, after all, a key reason Maomao diligently avoided going near the military encampment. She heaved a sigh. The way her breath fogged in the air proved the cold was still present. Spring's footfalls were still far off. Nobody else was in the room. Jinchi and Gaoshan left early that morning. In the 2 months Maomao had served him, she had started to understand Jinchi's routine. One task seemed to happen about every 2 weeks. The day before, he would take a long, slow bath and burn incense before leaving. Maomao used those days to polish the floor thoroughly. She was doing just that today, wiping a cloth across the ground with diligence. Her hands were growing numb with the cold, but with Sukin watching her, both mild and implacable, Maomao couldn't even consider slacking off. After Maomao dusted about half the building, Suhin finally seemed satisfied and suggested they stop for tea. They pulled 2 chairs up to a round table in the kitchen. They sat with warm cups of tea in their hands. The tea leaves were leftovers, not new. However, they were of such high quality that the brew still smelled wonderful. Maomao savoured the sweet aroma as she ate a sesame ball. She thought it would be nice to have something more savoury. However, she felt it would sound churlish to say so aloud. She suspected Suhin had prepared the snack, assuming a young woman would enjoy a sweet treat. Maomao felt she should look appreciative. Then she noticed Suhin was munching noisily on some grilled rice crackers. Maomao said nothing for a moment. Ah, that salty tang is like an addiction, Suhin said. She and Jinchi were certainly alike, Maomao thought. She reached for the dish of crackers, but Suhin took the last one before she could reach it. Now Maomao was sure Suhin was doing this on purpose. This attendant was very disagreeable. Maomao always ended up listening when she took a snack with other women, and this proved true at tea with Suhin. Suhin did not favour idle gossip, unlike the ladies of the pleasure district or the rear palace, but she often spoke about the master of the house. The meal tonight is vegetarian, Suhin said. Make sure you aren't sneaking any meat or fish. Yes, ma'am. Maomao knew better than to ask why they were eating as though undergoing a ritual purification. Suhin implied just enough with her tone for Maomao to guess. Could eunuchs perform ritual offices? She wondered. Purification was typically performed by those who would be participating in religious rituals. Those of aristocratic or noble birth could expect to preside at such functions from time to time. There were a number of things about Jinchi that Maomao didn't understand. For one, why a man of his birth should have become a eunuch. Then again, when she considered the time of his life when it had happened, it made a certain kind of sense. The former Empress Dowager was a woman of considerable abilities. Many viewed her as an empress in her own right during her time. It was said her influence, not her son's competence, prevented the country from falling into chaos during the former emperor's reign. However, a natural result of this was that she often relied on her own authority when she acted. For example, she had a very capable physician whom she favoured, castrated. That physician was Maomao's father. It was reasonable to think that Jinchi had become a eunuch in a similar way. Oh, and I need you to do a small errand for me this afternoon. You will have to go to the doctor and get some medicine. Yes, ma'am, Maomao blurted out before Suhin was finished speaking. I could wish you were always so enthusiastic, she said, and stuffed the last of the rice cracker into her mouth. The medical office was located on the eastern side of the outer palace, near the military headquarters. It may have been convenient for all the injuries the military caused. Maomao remembered what Jinchi had said about this physician. She was interested in him for other reasons too. She had once had first-hand experience with one of his medicines. It was enough to convince her that he was an accomplished practitioner. The rear palace had a rather unskilled doctor running its medical office. It felt like a waste, but Maomao was very curious about how things were done in the outer court. She said, I've come to pick up some medicine, and presented the tag Suhin had given her. The doctor was a man with high cheekbones. He looked at the item, then asked Maomao to sit down. He disappeared into a back room. Maomao sat and took a deep breath. A profusion of acrid smells and bitter flavours filled her nose and mouth. Maomao looked over at the desk where the doctor had been working. She saw a mortar and pestle with some herbs that were only half crushed. She used all her willpower to control her urge to turn the place upside down. She would have given anything to have a good close look through the cabinet full of medicines in the next room. No, she implored herself. She had to stay strong. She could feel her body edging its way toward the other room in spite of herself. "May I ask what you are doing?" a woman's cold voice said. Maomao snapped to reality. She discovered a very exasperated-looking court lady behind her. Maomao remembered her. It was the tall woman. Maomao realized she must look profoundly suspicious slinking toward the other room as she was. She promptly returned to her chair. "Just waiting for some medicine," she said innocently.